My name is Stuart Echols. I am an associate professor of landscape architecture at Penn State, and I also run the graduate programs in landscape architecture. I think I've enjoyed every subject I've ever taught, to be truthful. Currently, I teach grading and stormwater, which are my areas of expertise. So I enjoy those the most. I've also taught research methods in quite a few design studios. I would guess that the grading and stormwater are probably my favorites because it's my area that I work in. Curiosity and time management, which are probably the most important things for undergraduates as well. Undergraduates suffer from a real lack of time management. Graduate students do not. And then the ability to make selections, because there's so many wonderful things to do and study that you will frustrate yourself having to make choices from all of these good options. So I think that's the hardest part. Practice is expanding laterally. We are taking on more and more roles in greater diversity of design, management, NGOs, all sorts of aspects of environmental and social issues. I also see the digital world always expanding faster than anyone can imagine. And so not only is the software and the work that we can do with that expanding, but the connections that we make with folks and where we are able to practice because of those connections. Contemporary practice is changing very fast. It is, like I said previously, expanding into so many different areas. It's funny because, academia likes to think that they are leading where practice goes, and they are absolutely full of it. They respond to where practice goes. So, I could just take, one example, which is my area, that is, green infrastructure. When I started studying that in grad school, no one knew what it was. In fact, I failed a project because I filled it full of bioretention holes. And my professor was horrified that I'd done all that to avoid a detention system, which is exactly what I did. So I failed the project. But anyway, but now it is just part and parcel of design. And there are so many things that are part of design, that design practice. That's one of the reasons I think it's really important that we keep bringing young faculty into our program. They are the ones that know what's really going on out there in the world. And I think we've done an excellent job of bringing young faculty in. And, old people like I need to step out of the way and make room for them. And that doesn't mean we need to quit. It just means we need to get out of their way. And yeah, eventually we need to quit, but it doesn't mean we won't still be involved in one shape or form. Yeah, I've got a demonstration project on campus where we are designing, installing, and then testing various stormwater management systems. And in this case, we are designing online, offline systems, and we are testing them for their water quality and other environmental impacts. But right now we're in the design stage. In fact, we were in that public participatory information gathering stage. And so the funding for that allows me to hire 2 or 3 graduate students to work on the project, thank God, because otherwise I'd have to do all the work myself and it would never get done. So yeah, there's an example of funded research that I currently have. The last big project, and this one's not big, but the last big one was about a $2 million EPA grant doing research on people's perception of green infrastructure and how many different factors, including design, influence that perception, as well as the barriers to people installing green infrastructure, mostly municipal barriers. So yeah, there's always more work to do than there are people to do it. Eliza and I are starting a follow-up study looking at projects that have been installed for 10 or 20 years now that we've done case studies on, and doing follow-up with the folks that designed them, installed them, maintained them, funded them, and the public to see, in all honesty, what's gone wrong. I mean, we're thrilled with what's gone good, and we're definitely going to be, doing that work. But the other question is, how would you do it differently if you had it to do over? Because that sort of information is incredibly useful to designers. Other than the ones I just listed, I'm starting to have an interest in wetland restoration. And the reason is that I happen to own a wetlands that needs to be restored. It's been denigrated over the years. It was drained and farmed. And so now I'm finally at the point where I've got the time and interest to do that. I cannot tell you it's going to be a research project in any way, shape, or form, but that's okay. I've got enough research projects to keep me going. They're all looking at some very practical aspects of green infrastructure design, implementation, and maintenance. I still would like to do a more comprehensive project on design for maintenance. And what I mean by that is there's some pretty obvious things we've learned over time. Something as simple as, don't put every plant you can think of into your bioretention system, because no one's going to know how to maintain it. Pick your 3 favorites, put those in, and then make it obvious where they are. Even plant them on a grid if you need to. Plant them large enough that people can see them. So these are just, easy, low-hanging fruit. But there are dozens of other things in terms of the design of green infrastructure that we need to understand better in terms of the maintenance, because most municipalities are scared to death of the maintenance costs because it is a big unknown to them. And part of that research, frankly, is talking to designers about, their projects, what's gone well and hasn't gone well, especially in terms of maintenance. But the really fun part is talking to the folks doing the maintenance. And that has been very enlightening, both from the surprising lack of information and training that many of these folks have not been given, frankly. And also some of them have an incredible interest in it. And so we're seeing now in the last 5 years, programs coming together to train people specifically how to maintain green infrastructure. My gig on that is I think we need to train designers to make them more maintainable, whatever that may be. First off, I would say look at multiple graduate schools and get to understand what different programs are good at and what they're not good at, and look for a match to your interest for your career goals. So many students simply apply to schools because they've heard it's a good school, or that's a place I'd like to go. But what they really need to do is understand what the faculty are doing at that school and see if that's something they would like to spend a couple of years learning about. The other thing is, once you are a graduate student, I would say explore things and don't take it too seriously. And what I mean by that is you are going to be doing a graduate project of some sort, whether it's a capstone or a thesis or even a dissertation. That does not necessarily mean that you will be doing that subject for the rest of your life. Now, granted, if you're doing a dissertation, you probably will be doing something related to that subject the rest of your life. And that's a whole nother story that we can talk about, specifically for folks that are looking at a PhD, because that does require a huge amount of research before you get started into it, understanding the program. For the master's level programs, it simply requires an understanding of what the school is good at and making sure that's a match for you. And there again, I want the students to explore as much as they can. At the same time, I don't want them to get to the end of 2 years and go like, oh my gosh, I've got 1 year to figure out this final study. Now I really feel the pressure. Um, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so it's good to start exploring those options early so that you have somewhere to go with it as you work your way through.